Today we're zooming in on 2008, a year that belonged entirely, absolutely to Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, you might be thinking you already know the story, but it's fascinating to realize that for a player who eventually achieved such unimaginable heights, 2008 wasn't just some stepping stone. No, it was the exact moment his absolute potential crystallized for the very first time on the global stage. It's the year that forged that relentless mindset we all know today.
Just 23. It is literally staggering to pause and consider what he pulled off by that age. At 23 years old, he hadn't just broken into a starting lineup. He had completely conquered the fiercely competitive Premier League. He conquered the Champions League. And yeah, he conquered the world. To achieve total dominance across all three major tiers at an age when most players are, just finding their footing, it's incredibly rare. It set the stage for an era of football we will genuinely probably never witness again.
Section 1. The 2008 Coronation. Absolute global dominance.
Now let's get one thing straight. This wasn't a narrow victory or some highly debated decision. Out of a maximum possible 480 points, Cristiano collected an overwhelming 446. Think about that for a second. That is a 93% consensus in a highly subjective, highly political sport. It's just a massive, undeniable landslide. And sitting way back in a distant second place was Lionel Messi. Not a stranger, of course, but the undeniable heir apparent temporarily stranded behind the newly crowned king. The sheer mathematics here paints a picture of absolute, unchallenged dominance. And all of those 446 points led him right to a ridiculously glamorous stage in Paris. Picture the scene with me. You got the flashing lights of the global press, the absolute elite of the sporting world in the audience, and Cristiano standing there, feeling the heavy, glittering weight of that golden football in his hands. It's truly fascinating to uncover the profound mix of pride and intense validation he felt in that exact moment. Holding that award wasn't just about winning another trophy, it was the ultimate, tangible proof that every single sacrifice he had ever made was completely worth it. Which brings us to Section 2, the path to Paris, a foundation of hardship.
Because, the journey to that dazzling Parisian stage didn't start in some pristine, state-of-the-art academy. It started in a tin-roofed shack in Funchal. From there, it moved to the mainland, marked by the lonely tears of a 12-year-old boy in Lisbon who was completely isolated and thousands of miles from his family. And actually, scratch that. It wasn't just tough. It was almost over before it even began. Doctors literally had to operate on his racing heart when he was just a youth player. So the absolutely crucial point here is that every single one of these painful hardships, every tear shed, directly paved the way to the moment he hoisted that golden football.
And all that raw human emotion just kind of spilled over in the speech he gave to the global media that night. For a player already globally renowned for his brash, unwavering arrogance on the pitch, his voice was surprisingly soft and vulnerable. He said, "This is the climax of a dream I had since I was a child. I always believed I could be the best, but to actually hold this trophy is something special." It's a stunning contrast, right? That rare glimpse of vulnerability deeply grounds all the voting data and historical timelines into something remarkably, deeply personal. But here's the thing. Despite his immense individual talent and that famous self-belief, he knew he didn't reach the summit totally alone. On the biggest night of his life, he deliberately shared the spotlight. He pointed to three distinct pillars: his family, his teammates, and crucially, Sir Alex Ferguson. This wasn't just some polite list of thank yous you read off a card. It was a profound acknowledgement of the structure and mentorship that Ferguson provided, the exact environment that allowed his individual brilliance to actually shine. He openly admitted that without these key figures, the whole shebang would have been entirely impossible. Now, while he was expressing this quiet, soft-spoken emotion in Paris, the scene back home couldn't have been more different. His home island of Madeira went into an absolute frenzy. The contrast here is just beautiful. Think about the powerful imagery for a second. They were celebrating the local boy, the kid who had left the island years prior carrying nothing but a cheap suitcase, who is now holding a golden football at the absolute pinnacle of global sport. It really was a fairy tale ending to that chapter of his life.
Moving on to Section 3, the unquenchable hunger, the day after greatness.
So, to basically anyone else in the world, winning a Ballon d'Or is the ultimate finish line to a spectacular career. You've made it. But fascinatingly, for Cristiano, it was literally a starting block. Earning the title of the best player in the world didn't relax him at all. It actually bred a profound paranoia. He didn't see the award as a reason to kick back and rest on his laurels. Instead, it gave him an intense reason to worry that someone, somewhere, might take his crown.
This psychological anomaly is what truly separates the great from the absolutely legendary.
And we see this unquenchable hunger play out the very next morning. No joke. After the flashing lights, the champagne, and the glamour of Paris, he was the absolute first person to arrive at the training ground in Manchester. His manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, noticed this immediately and could only smile and shake his head in complete astonishment. He was seeing firsthand that the drive inside his number 7 was completely limitless. Because hey, actions speak far louder than words, and Ronaldo's immediate return to the daily grind proved his ambition was entirely unquenchable.
And, well, it's a really good thing he didn't hit snooze or take a day off, because the landscape of European football was violently shifting. Across the continent, a historic rivalry was already beginning to brew. Lionel Messi and Barcelona were actively preparing a massive counteroffensive. It was like an impending storm gathering on the horizon. The unstoppable forces that would violently push Ronaldo to his absolute physical and mental limits over the next decade were rapidly gathering momentum.
So, what's the big takeaway for us here? It ultimately comes down to a completely redefined understanding of the word dedication. Ronaldo realized a brutal, brilliant truth about success that applies way beyond the pitch. Staying at the absolute peak requires an even greater, more obsessive level of dedication than it took to get there in the first place. Reaching the top of your field is incredibly hard, absolutely. But defending that newly claimed spot at the top, that is a relentless, exhausting, daily battle that never truly ends. Which brings us to one final, lingering question. The boy from Madeira who left with a cheap suitcase had finally conquered the world. The king had been unequivocally crowned, but knowing that his own hunger was entirely unquenchable, and knowing that a historic, generation-defining rivalry was rapidly brewing across the continent, how exactly do you defend that throne? It's a question that would define the rest of his legendary career. Thank you so much for joining